Today, Japan instantly conjures visions of samurai, cherry blossoms, and temples that feel like postcards come to life. But the Japan of the past was far from the serene modern country we imagine. It was a place of bizarre rituals, brutal punishments, and customs so shocking most of us wouldn't last a week. Babies buried in jars. Samurai slicing open their own stomachs. A general so loyal he killed himself the day his emperor died. The history of Japan is wild, and we're about to trace that story across 6 major eras. From Stone Age villages all the way to a modern empire where eating beef almost sparked a holy war. Each period looks different on the surface, but they all share one theme. Disturbing facts you'll never forget. Jomon period. The Jomon period was Japan's Stone Age. People lived in pit houses dug into the earth, with thatched roofs and smoke curling out the top. They hunted boar, gathered nuts, and fished the coasts. And they left behind pottery that still stuns archaeologists today. These clay pots, decorated with rope-like patterns, are among the oldest in the world. Alongside them are clay figurines with bug-eyed alien faces. Nobody knows exactly what they meant, but most agree they were tied to ritual and magic. And ritual ruled everything. Infants who died were buried in clay jars, sometimes with a hole in the bottom so the spirit could escape. Adults mark life's milestones by having their teeth pulled. A wedding or a funeral wasn't just emotional, it might cost you an incisor. Birth was treated with suspicion too. A newborn's placenta could be buried at the village entrance to keep out evil. And if someone died inside a house, the building itself was abandoned as cursed. It sounds remote, but Jomon culture still lingers today. Modern Japan's deep connection to pottery, claycraft, and ritual symbolism can be traced all the way back here. The idea that places, objects, and even houses can carry spiritual pollution, still present in Japanese notions of purity, was already alive thousands of years ago. The Jomon lived in a world of spirits and clay, but all of that changed when rice farming arrived, and with it, social hierarchy, warfare, and some truly chilling funerals. Yayoi period. The Yayoi brought rice farming from the mainland. Villages expanded, metal tools clanged, and chiefs ruled with newfound authority. But this new order demanded darker sacrifices. Important funerals sometimes included live burials, with attendants forced into tombs to die alongside their master. When Queen Himiko, a shamaness who ruled in the 3rd century, died, records say 100 of her servants were sent with her. Loyalty was measured in bodies, and life outside the tomb wasn't much kinder. Warfare was constant. Victories were proved not with medals, but with heads. Warriors cut off their enemies' skulls and presented them to their leaders like grisly receipts. To outsiders, the Yayoi looked even stranger. They tattooed their faces and bodies in elaborate patterns. To the Chinese, they seemed barbaric. To the Yayoi, tattoos were identity, protection, and a badge of belonging. But traces of this world live on. Rice, introduced by the Yayoi, is still the heart of Japanese cuisine and culture. Many Japanese place names trace back to early farming communities. Even the tattoo taboo in Japan today may echo these ancient associations, linking ink with outcasts and warriors. So the Yayoi transformed Japan into farmland defended by blood. But out of this violent soil would rise a court obsessed with poetry, perfume, and appearances, where beauty itself could feel like horror. And by the way, if you're enjoying how deep we're going, subscribe now, because the further we go, the stranger it gets. The Heian period makes the Yayoi look tame. Heian period. The Heian court in Kyoto shimmered with silks, painted screens, and poetry. Aristocrats lived lives of refinement, trading love poems instead of small talk. Women wrote novels that still shaped Japanese literature. On the surface, it was elegance, but beneath it all lay customs that to us look almost grotesque. Women painted their faces bone white, shaved off their eyebrows, and drew tiny smudges high on their foreheads. They dyed their teeth jet black, smiling with mouths that looked like pools of ink. Add in hair that trailed longer than their own height, and a noblewoman in a darkened hall would have looked less like a date and more like a ghost. Superstition governed daily life. If someone died in a house, the body was removed through a window, and the building might be abandoned forever. Unlucky calendar days canceled journeys. Illness meant demons were near, and monks were called to chant exorcisms until the spirits left, and beauty ended in blood. The Genpei War destroyed the ruling Taira clan. At the naval battle of Dan-no-ura, defeated nobles threw themselves into the sea, including the 6-year-old Emperor Antoku, drowned in his grandmother's arms. The dynasty of elegance ended not with music and poems, but with suicide and salt water. Yet high-end culture endures. Many of Japan's aesthetic ideals, seasonal beauty, layered clothing, even the origins of kana writing, come from this time. The sense of elegance tinged with melancholy, mono-no-aware, still shapes Japanese art today. But after the poets and perfume nobles drowned, a new power rose. One where honor meant gutting yourself in front of your comrades. Kamakura period. The Kamakura shogunate was the age of the samurai. Loyalty to one's lord was absolute. Failure meant seppuku, ritual suicide. A warrior would kneel, cut open his stomach, and wait for a comrade to take off his head. It was horrific, but it was considered the only honorable way to die. On battlefields, proof of victory came in heads. Samurai decapitated their enemies, washed and perfumed the skulls, and presented them in ceremonies for their generals. Rows of heads could line the gates of cities. Honor and horror were the same thing. Then came the Mongols. They arrived with poisoned arrows, mass formations, and bombs that exploded with smoke and fire. The Japanese had never seen anything like it. Horses bolted, warriors panicked, and the world itself seemed to collapse under thunder and flame. Twice, typhoons saved Japan, smashing the invasion fleets. They called the storms divine winds. Without them, Japan might have fallen completely. And though the Mongols retreated, their shadow still lingers. The word kamikaze, divine wind, would be revived centuries later in World War II. Proof that the memory of those storms never faded. But the samurai age didn't just create loyalty and terror. It paved the way for an era where executions became public theater, and everyday people lived under a system of fear so strict it shaped society for centuries. Tokugawa period. The Tokugawa era brought 2.5 centuries of peace. No wars, no invasions, just a world of bustling cities, kabuki theaters, woodblock prints, and booming markets. But that peace was maintained by cruelty that turned justice into horror shows. Executions were staged as spectacles. Criminals were boiled alive, burned at the stake, crucified, or sawed in half. Heads were nailed to city gates with wooden placards announcing their crimes. Even petty thieves could be tattooed across the forehead, marked for life. Not everyone counted as human. Outcasts known as Eta and Hinin were forced into jobs like butchering animals, burying corpses, or assisting at executions. Some were used for live sword testing, their bodies sliced apart to prove the sharpness of a blade. Outcast women could be condemned to brothels, punished through lives of forced prostitution. And in villages, survival came at a chilling price. Infanticide was common, so common it was called mabiki, thinning out. like plucking seedlings from a crowded field. Families smothered or drowned newborns they couldn't support. In some regions, nearly half of all infants were killed before their first day was done. Yet Tokugawa life also shaped modern Japan. Many of today's cities, street plans, festivals, and even food cultures solidified during this long peace. The order and structure of society, the communal responsibility, the strictness of rules. Echoes of Tokugawa still shape Japanese culture. But peace didn't last forever. When the world came knocking, Japan leapt into modernity almost overnight, dragging its old ghosts along with it. Meiji period. The Meiji Restoration abolished the samurai and forced Japan into the modern world. Trains roared across the land, factories rose, and a modern army was built. But the ghosts of the old ways clung on. When Emperor Meiji publicly ate beef in 1872, breaking a taboo more than 1,000 years old, Buddhist monks stormed the palace in outrage. Guards cut them down where they stood. A simple meal had turned into a massacre. Former samurai also rebelled. At the Battle of Shiroyama, thousands charged into Gatling guns with nothing but swords. It was a hopeless last stand. Those who survived often ended their lives with seppuku, clinging to the old code even as bullets tore them apart. And even in the new century, the rituals of the past refused to die. When Emperor Meiji passed in 1912, General Nogi, one of Japan's greatest military heroes, killed himself and his wife in ritual suicide to follow his emperor into death. Japan had railways, telegraphs, and factories, but its soul was still shadowed by feudal loyalty. Modern Japan still bears these echoes. The samurai code of Bushido, reinvented in the Meiji years, became a cornerstone of national identity. The reverence for loyalty and sacrifice never truly disappeared. It simply changed costumes. From infants buried in jars to generals gutting themselves in the age of telegraphs, Japan's past is filled with customs that feel alien, brutal, and unforgettable. These weren't small quirks. They were the foundations of an entire civilization. So the next time you picture cherry blossoms or a quiet temple garden, remember the centuries of ritual, blood, and fear that came before. Because if you or I were dropped into ancient or feudal Japan, there's no doubt about it. We would not survive.